Hey there. Thanks for joining me. I have a question and a thought. High performers, they're trained to override their bodies. We're taught to push through signals, suppress sensations, trust cognition over instinct. Isn't this what they tell us how results are going to get produced for us? We're going to get results if we could just push through. Well, what if the very skills that made you successful are now distorting not just your perception and narrowing your decision range, they're impacting your physical health on a deeply biological level that's impacting how you function and how you act and how you think. You see, at Silver Disobedience, we question inherited assumptions. And on the perception dynamic side, we look at how perception, not just intelligence or effort, actually determines outcome. Well, today's guest is a rock star in the world of bioenergetic health. Her name's Dr. Sue Morter. She brings a regular, I'm having a tough time with this one this morning, but we know we don't edit. So she is rigorously grounded in challenging many ways we think about healing, thriving, and creating a purposeful life. In her new book, The Anatomy of Awakening, which we're going to talk about as well, she may claim some unconventional things, like the idea that awakening isn't philosophical, it's physiological. So this conversation is going to be grounded in science and a lot of research. Please say hi to Dr. Sue Morter.
Hey, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I always love this conversation. I love to see where it gets to go, someplace new every time. So I'm sure with you, we're headed to some pretty fun places.
This is going to be a blast because I have a lot of admiration for you. I have gone through a lot of things you've written, what you've worked on. You are a pioneer in bioengineering. In many ways, bioengineering our health. Can you talk to us about that?
So what we're talking about, bioenergetics, it has to do with the energy of the body. That's what the word means. And it has to do with how energy flows through the system. And what we know, what science has shown us, is that there is a route of energy that is supposed to flow through the body. There are some energies that are running from head to toe and into the earth, and other energies that are rising from the earth up through the body and out the top of the head, and some that cycle around the body in terms of a toric field, which is sort of an energy field in the shape of a giant donut around the body. And this energy is designed to be in motion. And if it is in motion, as it's allowed to be in its natural flow, it maintains and flourishes and brings nutrients and carries away damaged tissues and serves in the repair of things. It brings the hormonal system fluidly flowing through the body. It is the nature of the flow of the body chemistry, of the cardiovascular system. Everything is really in flow if we're in our healthy, vital state. And when that energy gets shut down, we are compromised in some way. We start to feel boggish. We can even feel depressed. We can feel lethargic. We can feel hesitant and feel emotionally like procrastination is better for us in some way. And we just start to develop this whole delusional way of living when that energy gets blocked. It creates pain or deficiencies when we don't heal. And so when we turn our attention to this energy flow, everything starts to wake up in a little bit different way in terms of how we can manage our own health and vitality.
I realize I erred when I said bioengineering. But what I was thinking is when you said bioenergetics, I'm thinking we are engineering a new way of
Right. I started to comment on it just like that from the word bioengineering, because we are engineering a healthier body and a healthier life we are truly the engineer and the creator of our life experience. And we've never really been taught how much impact we can have on our body's ability to heal itself. We've been directed into thinking that that power comes from outside the body in terms of a surgery or a medication or a radiation or something along those lines. And there are many things that we can do prior to that level of focus that can improve and either admonish the needs for such more intense, treatment regimes. So you were onto it with bioengineering. Absolutely.
And I do know what bioengineering is, but it's funny because maybe because I think of life as in life force as being very interconnected and engineered in such a fascinating way with energy.
Yeah.
And when you talk about bioenergetics, how would you define the root core of that?
The root core of you mean the foundation, like where does the energy come from, or what does the term mean, or
what does it mean
yeah.
to hear that phrase? In that, is it how do we get it?
Yeah, this is a great question. Doctors have worked with people in terms of moving energy. Acupuncture, for instance, moves energy through the body by the use of needles that stimulate the energy to flow in their ideal tracks and flows, meridians and little rivers of flow where energy is supposed to move. And for thousands of years, that is a modality that people have been using. And so often patients feel the benefits from such things, or from acupressure, where you're using similar principles, but you're not using the needles to reroute the energy flow through the body. And so patients have responded to such things for millennia. And rarely does someone actually ask, well, what is this energy? Where does it come from? Where do we get it? What's happening here? And that brings us into the world of quantum science. Quantum science has basically determined that everything is energy. Our entire manifest reality is energy-based, and it's energy that is conscious. In other words, consciousness is the foundation of our reality. So that's a whole conversation that I love to have, but let me answer this question first, that if everything is energy, and it is, including you, then we know that energy is flowing and moving, and it's vibrating in different vibrational radio stations, if you will, different frequencies. So we have energies that are emotions, like you have emotional energy, and you have physical energy, and you have mental energy, and they are various radio stations in a larger bandwidth that is part of nature itself. So this energy is flowing into our physical body from the unmanifest unified field. And so that would be the quantum field. So what we know is that all physical matter, this might be helpful, all physical matter is compressed energy. So the chair that you're sitting in is energy. It's just compressed into a density that you can sit on it. Our physical bodies are compressed energy. And there's a lesser compressed version of ourselves that is our emotional body of energies and our mental body of energies. And all of that is on a spectrum. And so we are perceiving energy to be coming into the body, and it's measurable that energy of nature flows into the body from above the head, into the head, and down through a central channel of the body. And it flows all the way through the body and into the earth. And then it rises up from the earth and rises back up through the body and cycles around the outside of the body and comes down to the base of the spine and rises up through the body again. And it's supposed to constantly be cycling in this way, from above the head, down through the body, into the earth, from the earth, up through the body, out through the top of the head, and cycling around. It's electromagnetic energy in nature. We can measure it. It's affected by an electrical field and by a magnetic field. Our thoughts are electric. Our love is magnetic. So when our thoughts and our loving presence are in harmony with one another, this field becomes neutralized and amplified, and it functions better. In other words, it's not interrupted or distorted or diminished by our ways of being. So it's a pretty big field of study, bioenergetics, but it is that, in a spiritual conversation, they would say it is spirit, it is essence, it is life force itself.
Mhm.
And in a scientific conversation in the quantum world, they would say, well, it is this field, the quantum field, that is materializing into form by compressing through a series of compressions that generates a physical version of ourselves that is here living this life that we're living in. And
Now,
so,
you've heard the word compress and you've used the word compress and compression quite a
yeah,
few times. So I want to talk about that. You said the difference between, let's say, this chair is its compressed energy different than me sitting here on the chair.
yeah.
Now, does our energy change during the day based on how compressed we are or how open we are?
Well, you're on to it again. Yes, indeed, it does. So the more our mind functions in a stressed or a super focused fashion that has any sort of tension associated with it, which comes with the idea that there are conditions that are threatening to me potentially. And as long as those conditions exist, then I'm under threat. I have to focus very intensely. And so we generate more, we overly compress in the body. And that leads to a suppression of this energy flow, which lends itself to a suppression of our available energy that we're able to sense and feel and perceive. And an individual living inside of that state for a long enough period of time lives under the effects of that suppressed energy. And they are the ones who maybe initially show up as anxious. They feel an anxiety about it. They don't know what's going on. And then later, after that exhausts a little, this individual will reveal as feeling depressed, suppressed, depressed,
Mhm.
as they're unable to breathe and feel the enlivenment that is truly meant for them on this deep cellular level that we are operating on. So when that starts to get compressed and suppressed in this way, we don't feel the permission even to be creative or exploratory or adventurous. We feel heavy, as if there's a burden of sorts. And so when people have unresolved emotion, when they carry around their unresolvedness, it generates more compression in their system than ideal. So they end up feeling the depressed types of sensations, not to mention that it starts to reroute the energies from their low back and their legs, etc., and they end up with low back pain or weakness and a lack of vitality in so many ways. So many things can occur.
It's interesting also what you said, because for years when someone would say to me, well, I'm feeling depressed, I'm like, well, what are you depressing? And they would look at me and say, what are you talking about? It's a feeling. I'm feeling that way. And I'm like, well, is there something you're depressing? Which
Yeah.
really aligns with what you're saying, compressing. If you compress,
100%.
you want to make a good snowball, you got to really
Compress it.
You're in California.
Zing. Right.
You got to really compress that snow.
Exactly accurate. Now, most people would say, what are you depressed about? Instead of what are you depressing? So most people say, what are you depressed about? And then the person goes to, who do I blame this on? Well, I'm sad because my son is doing this. I'm sad because I'm depressed because we can't get this happening or that happening. And all the while, if we were dealing with the emotions that are associated with those life experiences, we would not be unresolved on them. And so we would be able to be present with them and allow energies to flow through our system. But what you're asking is a much better question. What are you depressing? They are depressing their power. They're depressing their ability to show up to the situations that are occurring in life, mostly because people haven't been shown how to do that. We just haven't been taught how to do that. Because if everyone around us asks us, well, who do you blame that on? They don't use those words, but, why are you depressed? Who can we blame this on? Where can we find who's the responsible party here? And because the collective is operating that way, no one really recognizes that, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing this to myself. I'm actually not allowing my energy to flow freely. I'm depressing myself because of an assumption that I can't handle what's going on in the outer world. And so what I do is I teach people how to build the neurocircuitry to be able to handle those circumstances in the outer world, so that we do show up in our power, that we do meet these circumstances shoulder to shoulder and not be bowled over by them, right? So
now, how do you teach this to someone?
yeah. So, it's sort of like you don't know that you can ride a bicycle until you get on the bicycle and try to ride it. It's that. You don't know that you can do that until someone shows you, well, here's the gist of it. You sit here, you put your feet on these pedals, you got to keep going. You can't stop pedaling, you fall over, and it's that. And so what we're doing with bioenergetics is teaching people how to get that energy flowing through the system in the manner that it is built to and intended to be flowing. And so do you have, are most people watching or are most people listening on our?
Most people will be listeners, but we do record these for those on YouTube who want to watch it.
Okay. So can I show a little image that just shows something? Okay, I'll describe it for those of you that are listening. All right, so I have described it already. So the ideal is this energy pours in from overhead, pours down through this body, hits the earth, rises up again, and cycles around at the outside of the body, back in at the base of the spine, and it keeps recycling and recycling and recycling. And what happens when we start doubting ourselves or shutting down, or we loved someone and we got hurt, and so we're never going to do that again, just exactly like that, or we tried to be creative and we got laughed at, or whatever it was. And these things happened early on in our lives, okay? And then we keep repeating these patterns because we shut down in certain ways. And so this other image is showing how the energy comes down through the body and hits the earth and rises up. And because we've shut down in our ability to freely love without hesitation, or we've shut down our voice in the world and we just keep our mouth shut under certain circumstances. We have unspeakables in our life, or we are afraid to engage in an empowered way because at some point we got in trouble for that. So we have these areas that are shut down, literally, energetically, and the areas are related to different aspects of our consciousness. And so now this rising energy has to find its way around these areas that we have shut down, but it still has to flow in an upward fashion because that's what keeps us alive. And so it is wobbling sort of around these areas that it can't pass through because we've overly compressed them. When I say shut down, we've contracted in some area, overly contracted, and now the energy has to flow around these contracted areas. In someone's life, it's like that knot in your stomach that won't go away, that lump in your throat that happens every time you get into a certain type of situation, that tightness in your chest or the heaviness in your chest. Those are signs that energy has been overly compressed somewhere in your body. And so this wobbling energy is creating a distortion in this energy field. As it comes up and out, it distorts this field. So now this individual is standing inside that donut-shaped energy field that I was describing, and they're looking out through a distorted version of it. So they see a distorted world, and they think that it's true that people don't care and that there's no opportunity for me and there's never enough and I can't. And so it reflects back to them as if that is true. And so they're living in a world that is made up and it's painful. So what we're doing is telling people, showing people how to recognize that when this rising energy hits one of those areas that are overly compressed, that's what creates the knot in your stomach or the tightness in your chest. You can feel it. And so when you learn to feel where these things are happening, where in the body this circuitry isn't happening, the flow isn't free, then I'm teaching people how to bring their consciousness inside their body and kind of hug the body, like to center their mind on this area. And what we end up doing is teaching people how to get that energy to flow through that area of overcompression instead of flowing around it. Because the longer it flows around it, the more we're kind of sweeping things under the rug. And so what we're doing is allowing people to teach themselves how to get this electromagnetic energy to flow through the core of their body the way that it is intended. It's a practice that is thousands of years old. It's put together from several practices from ancient Eastern practices of working with breathwork and consciousness and natural healing. And so when we start to do this, what happens is we enter the conversation, the quantum conversation again, little photons, these packets of energy that are the smallest, some of the smallest measurable packets of energy that we know, they are guided by our focus. So if we're focused on blaming someone else, our little packets of power and awareness go on to that someone else. And when we're focused on self, those little packets of awareness and empowerment gather deep in our own core. So what we're doing is focusing more conscious energy into the areas that have been shut down and giving them a chance to open up again. And they do, because by design, they're meant to be. Nature's on our side. So the more we do that, the more the sensory nervous system can pick up on a flow of energy in a part of us that's been shut down for who knows how long. And as it does, it starts to take that into account. And as such, it starts to open up that flow and allow for that natural self-healing corrective process to happen on an energetic level, just like it happens when we cut ourselves and the skin heals, or we break a bone and the bone knows what to do. The body knows what to do to heal that bone. This energetic system is also designed to be self-healing and self-regulating. We just have never even had a conversation about it. We know nothing about it because our attention has been directed to the outer world. Yeah, you need to take something. You need something outside of you to fix this situation that's broken. And what we're basically saying is, you might not actually be broken. There might be something going on here that's just suppressing too much of you, and it's finally caught up. And now you're having symptoms or issues in life that you shouldn't have to be having. And if your energy was flowing properly, chances are it would shift. So that's a long answer.
No, that was a fantastic answer. I'm very focused on conscious and unconscious awareness and the perceptions that form from both, whether we realize them or not, and that become our operating systems with how we approach other people, situations, and life.
Yeah.
And when you talk about bioenergetics, where do you feel the conscious awareness is versus the unconscious, and how are you working to tie them together?
Yeah. The whole problem that I just described is caused because of unconscious energy flow. We're not aware of what's going on. We're just not aware. We're not awake to it. And we're not aware of it and awake to it because nobody said, hey, that thing that's going on right there, it's related to your back pain. It's related to your sleepless nights. It's related to the fact that you can't speak your truth in situations and that you feel suppressed in your relationships at work and at home or whatever. And so the whole idea is, let's bring consciousness to these patterns of flow in the body, because it will bring consciousness to the patterns of flow in your life. So think about it this way. If you're shut down in the parts of your own consciousness that are related to your personal power, it affects your physical body as well. There's an area in the body that's specifically related to your personal power, and it's in this solar plexus. It's just right below where the ribs splay apart, and there's a lot that happens right there. And just below the navel is an aspect of vibrational frequency of this energy flow that is housed in what we would consider more of an ancestral or wisdom capacity of ours, our own innate intuitive feelings, our gut feelings, our hunches, our inner knowings are actually related to parts of the physical body. And our ability to speak our truth obviously has to do with the throat, etc. Our ability to exchange and feel that we are loved and that we can begin again and forgive and love again is related obviously to the heart center, this area of the body. But these are levels of consciousness that are energy vibrating at different frequencies. So each frequency has its own contribution to the overall recipe. And so when someone is unconscious, it means those levels of consciousness are not connected with their alert, aware mind. Their mind isn't aware of the fact that they are shut down in these ways. usually because it happens before we're 5 years old that we shut these things down with small incidences that seem like everything to us because that's our whole world. We haven't been out, we haven't been across the country or overseas when we're 4 years old. We're like dealing with the big people who feed us and clothe us and shelter us. And so if there's a mishap under that small, roof, it impacts us and gets memorized in the subconscious memory, and it drives us. Now, here's the amazing thing. We will go out into the world as young adults, and we will establish relationships based upon that unconscious shutdown, because the system overall wants to correct itself. So it attracts circumstances that will prod us into finally realizing we're shutting ourselves down. We're not even aware of our power. We're not even aware of our capacity to choose. That just because this thing happens or this person says this thing, we're not even aware that we have a choice to how we respond to them, because we're shut down in this part of our system. So I have this saying that if it's not happening in your body, it's not happening in your life, because this energy pours down into the system and emanates as if we're projecting a movie onto a movie screen. And so if we're shutting down these energies in our own system, that energies that's pouring into us and then rolling before us and creating our life experience, they're also going to be compromised. The way that we project onto the movie screen of our lives gets compromised because we're shutting it down. So if it's not happening in our body, it's not happening in our life. And the beauty about this body is that it shows us the parts of us that are remaining unconscious and the parts of us that we're already conscious. So sometimes I'll teach people to start paying attention to how it feels when you think this thought or when this person says this thing, and they can't feel anything in their bodies because they've been living in their heads their whole lives, trying to survive and trying to protect and trying to do the smart things. They can't feel themselves. And if we can't live down in the body and start to learn to feel ourselves, I mean, anyone can start to learn to feel themselves. But if you're currently not able to, it's a direct reflection on the fact that the unconscious parts of you are running your life because they seek to become conscious. So if you're down,
something you said too, though, Doctor, is the reverse is also true, in my observation, which is if it's happening in your body, is happening in your life.
Yes.
Because, many times when I would have someone come to me and I'm, in a session and they would say, well, I have cancer, or, this is happening to me now. Yeah. And I would say, what was happening a couple of years ago? Oh, I don't want to talk about it. Like, oh, really? What did didn't want to talk about, and you would find they would say it was just the worst time in my life. This was happening, and it could be anything. This could be anything. Yeah. I found that a lot of the things that were happening in someone's body had happened in their lives 2 years prior, 18 months prior, there were triggers. There were clear things that were getting depressed, things that needed to be said, as you were saying, we were just talking about. And that compression got tighter and tighter, causing energy flows to flaw or malfunction or not align correctly, whatever words we want to use. So what have your observations been with that?
100%. In that, there's a research project that's been out for decades that was when we first started recognizing that, wow, there's a relationship between unresolved emotion and cancer, chronic degenerative diseases of all sorts. But this particular one was, it's called the Iron Law of Cancer. And they took 1,000 patients, and interviewed them and recognized that more than 90% of them had an incident happen 1.5 to 2 years prior. So here you are asking a couple of years.
Really I don't know that study, but it's exactly what I observed over and over and over again. It was always 18 to 24 months.
Yes, because we have a buffer system that we can run on under emergency situations. But if we use up the tank, if we empty the tank of that buffer system, then we start digging into our deep reserves that are the ones that keep us healthy and keep our ability to respond and to keep systems flowing the way that they're designed to, without cellular breakdown in mass. And so So when we do use that up, that's what happens. The default happens, the symptoms arise because the cells are breaking down. And the next thing you know, we're in trouble. And so the good news is those buffer systems can be rebuilt. We can fulfill them. We can replenish and rejuvenate and repair. And the people who get a diagnosis and say, you know what, that's not for me. And they get a prognosis that says, here's probably what's going to happen in your world. And the person goes home and they say, no, that's not my story. That's not what's going to happen in my life. There's something that shifts right then. And what happens in those moments on a psychological and then therefore bioenergetic level, because our mind has every influence on how this energy flows, immense influence on how this energy is allowed to flow through our bodies. It's our domain. And we don't even know that we're shutting it down when we get angry and stay angry. We don't even know the impacts that we're having when we don't really process life and come to terms with things and let go. And so what happens in that moment, the person says, no, that is not going to be my story. They are saying, no, I'm more important than that. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And there is a greatest sense of love, self-love, that is now cultivating. Those little photons that I was speaking about are gathering up because the person claimed it back for themselves in a way. And now that energy can create some potency and they can start taking care of themselves on a deep, intimate level in ways that they didn't before. And what I mean there is everything, because a person can eat right and exercise and do all the right things and still get sick. And we've seen it too many times. Now we know it helps, but it's not the be all end all. The missing ingredient there, I feel, is a deeply rooted and anchored sense of self-love, a sense of presence that is second to none, that will not compromise, that will not let anything, crash what is happening here. And so they then start to translate their life happenings differently. They interpret them differently. They perceive what's going on differently. And if people can flip that over into that, and we don't have to have a trauma or a drama to turn that on. That's what I do with people is teach them how to do that. And as a byproduct of that when we flip, we start to recognize, one golden rule. Everything that happens in my life is happening in my favor for awakening from unconscious to conscious. I can interpret every single thing that happens in my life from that filter. And if I do, it will serve me. I will let it serve me instead of buckle me over and take me out. Because
everything that is happening in my life is happening as a favor.
It's in my favor
It's
to
in
awaken.
my favor.
It's in my favor. It's like the universe is saying, hey, you got to get better.
Mantra. That's a great thing to say every day.
Yeah. It's happening in the favor of my awakening. My awakening from being an unconscious individual that's just, going along with the herd, or a conscious individual that is clearly interpreting life as, this is in support of me realizing this, and this is in support of me waking up to this, and this happened in support of me claiming this for myself, and this happened. Here's what I got out of it, is the gist of it. People have to say, what am I getting out of this situation? What is benefiting me from this set of circumstances? And immediately the mind might say, I can't think of anything good. What's so good about cancer diagnosis, or what's so good about, an unannounced divorce that just, is now in my lap, or what's so good about my kids no longer coming home for the holidays, or the things that happen in life. And there is something in it deeply, deeply there that is completely in support of your autonomy, of your sovereignty, of your recognition of your wholeness and your completeness and your fullness. And it's there for you to shake you loose from some of those beliefs that you cling to so much that it's strangling you and overly compressing you when things aren't going the way that you think they have to in order for you to be okay. So life then becomes a grand adventure for people when we can flip this over and start to recognize, things, perceive them from a different bird's eye view, a different perspective.
I think that's fantastic that you just said that, because I grew up with a mother who lived to 92, a real firecracker. And, I used to want to throw books at her that she would read because she would quote from them, which I now torture my children the same way. But, thanks, Mom.
Right. Okay, great.
You're learning well. But she would say, "Let go, let God,"
Hmm.
and she, or "Thy will be done." There were always things like that. Know thyself. You couldn't walk
Yeah.
out of the house without seeing an embroidered sign that you wanted to take off the wall and smack her in the head with some days. Especially as a teenager.
Yeah.
But
It is.
there's a lot to the idea that we're always planning, we're planning and planning, and then things happen. And I always think of that, and the audience has heard me say it before, that Zen story that I won't repeat about perhaps. And I always try to get into perhaps mode when
Yeah.
something happens and say, well, perhaps it'll be good. Perhaps I just don't see exactly why this is happening right now.
Yeah.
But perhaps it's going to take me in a direction that's beneficial in
Yeah.
some way.
Yes. And so this is what I do is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, because that is
Yeah.
what I'm getting from your essence.
Yes. So the beautiful thing is, and most people don't know this, is that what your mind can't answer, your body can help with. What your mind can't answer, your body can help with. So if your mind can't come up with the answer on its own, then perhaps the mind and the body together can. And here's how we do so. So if we say, where in my body could I build the circuitry to better understand or to better handle what's this situation that's now in front of me? Where in my body could I build the circuitry to better be able to manage this set of circumstances? Instead of saying, okay, there's good in this. I know there's good. I heard there was good in this, so I got to find what's good. And then they rack their brain and they can't find what's the gift. What's the gift? What's the gift? I can't find it. So instead of saying, why is this happening in my life? Or why do you keep doing this thing that's so hard for me? Ask a better question. The question of an awakening perspective is, where in my system could I build more flow? Because if that flow was happening through my body the way it's supposed to, I'd be in touch with all of those different levels of my own consciousness. I would be waking them up. They wouldn't be subconscious. They wouldn't be unconscious. They'd be turning on. And if that energy was flowing through them and stirring it and stimulating it, I'd have all those resources to utilize in a moment when a question like this is before me. So how do I turn some of them on that aren't turned on? And which ones do I turn on so that I can get the answer of how this is benefiting me? And all we have to do is let the mind ask the body, because the mind and the body and the breath are designed to work together as one. And when we use them separately, it's trouble. We can't function the way that we're designed to function. We will super function if we will put mind and body and breath back together again. So they have to talk to each other. They have to work together. So you ask, where in my body could I build the circuits to better handle this new diagnosis or better handle this new situation that is stirring in my life? And all of a sudden, you don't know why, but your mind just went to your gut, or your mind just went to your heart, or your mind just went to your throat. It will go somewhere. And so that's the beginning right there. If you hug on the inside of your body, wherever your mind just went, and you might even feel a nudge or a knot or something show up, but your mind will go there. It's the craziest thing. Your mind will be saying, I don't know the answer to this. I don't know the answer. But all of a sudden, your attention's in your throat and you don't know why. Or you're like, I don't know why you're doing this. I don't know. Oh, and your hand goes right to your stomach. That's it. That's the level of consciousness that resides in that part of the body that is saying, this is our moment. Don't pass us up. So if you give it a hug, just squeeze it on the inside or put your hand on it even. And you learn, I teach people how to come into the deep core of their body and start to breathe up and down this whole central channel where all this energy is supposed to be routing at its foundational level in the first place, and start to guide that energy right through that area that your mind just went to, because the system will answer its own question. It does. It does. If we cut ourselves, it heals automatically. If there's a blockage, the energy wants to rush through that blockage and not allow it to seal off and fragment us in the ways that it does. But we override things with our mind and we disperse our attention, and we don't use this equipment the way it was built to be used. And so we don't benefit the way that we could, but we can. And so that's a circuit building process that carves a pathway straight through. And in real time, when we're upset, You ask a better question instead of, why does this always happen to me? Or why do they keep doing that? And you pound on the steering wheel, or you're shouting at the mirror, or all the things that people do. And the next time that happens, instead of doing that, just ask, where in my own system could I improve my energy flow? Because if my energy was flowing the way it's supposed to, I could handle this situation. I wouldn't get overwhelmed by it. It might be huge, but it wouldn't buckle me over and take me out of the game. It wouldn't, send me to bed for 3 days. It wouldn't, cause me to say, oh, I don't want to talk about that. I'm just not, no, that's an unspeakable. We don't go there. The fact that we don't go there is the problem. We have to go there. The situation happens so that we would go there. And so we just have to be more interested in trusting our body's ability to heal, and the fact that it's all truly trying to support us if we let it.
Where did this set of knowledge and experience birth from within you?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, I had a great start. I was born to a pioneer in energy medicine. My father was doing groundbreaking things back in the 70s and 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, et cetera. Until he left the planet, he was always very focused on that. So my curious mind and a foundation of understanding bioenergetics, was my dinner time conversation growing up. It was that. And then I started getting headaches. I graduated, became a doctor, opened a clinic and was working on patients all the time, having great results in my clinic, et cetera, and off to a great start. And several years into it, I started getting migraine headaches and I started missing work. And so I started missing like a day or two a week. Sometimes for a few months, it was starting to happen like this. And I was like, something's got to give. So I was drawn to meditation, because I knew that many people had resolved headaches with meditation. And so I innocently went into a meditation retreat, and I instantly started having transcendental experiences, like crazy, like multidimensional experiences into other worlds and other realms. And it sounds really crazy.
No,
it didn't me at the time, but what am I going to do? This is happening. I can't deny it. And I lit up in a state of consciousness that is what we would call our super consciousness, the Atman, the Godhead. It was just this beautiful experience. I was me, but I wasn't in a body. I could see around, in front, behind, above, below, the same, in a light so brilliantly bright. It was 10 times brighter than the brightest day I had ever seen in the desert. And I was this ray of light, and I could see the earth beneath me. It was about the size of a marble, and I was embedded into it up to what would have been my knees, but I didn't have knees because I wasn't in a body. But I was a ray of light, and I had free will. I could choose to look that way or that behind me or in front of me. I could take a big breath or a little breath, and every time I took a breath, this beautiful pink iridescent horizon would just rise. It was so magnificent, like a giant wings of a stingray under the sea in slow motion. It would just rise up and lower, and it was a definite direct access into some what we would call divine realms. This brilliant light, this brilliant space, and I knew in that moment that this is the truth of who we are. I knew it was like oh. And I recognize that this thing that we're doing here on earth is just a thing that we're doing here on earth. It's not who we are. It's a project that we're in, and that we are so vast and so immense. And there was nothing broken. There was nothing missing. There was nothing wrong. There was nothing to become. It was just wholly whole. It was fully full, satiated, gratified. I can't even describe, really, that words can't do it justice, but it's the best I got in this moment. And when I came down back into my body in that meditation, I knew that my life was changed forever. And what happened was, as I started to drop into my body, there was a vibration so intense, I had to lay down. And there were so many things that were happening. It was amazing. People were tending to me. It ended up that they got me to a place and fed me and cared for me for 4 or 5 days, because I literally couldn't come out of it. The vibration was so intense. And it took me a long time to integrate enough to go back to the clinic. And, it took me weeks to really get my feet under me. But it was a long time before I could just, stand to be around regular music or, down the streets and the sidewalks or in the mall or something like that. Just forget about it. But then as I learned to get in my body with what I now knew, I became super functional. It wasn't compromising to me at all. And you wouldn't even believe the schedule that I keep right now, the things that I do, and what gets to happen inside of the things that come out of my mouth. Sometimes they're coming out, I'm hearing it for the first time too. And it's because of access to this, there's a realm, a level of consciousness that we all have access to, but we're not aware of it. And so I had a major awakening to what is, like the immaculate, intelligence, the universal intelligence that is referenced in many different traditions as the Akashic records or the immaculate mind or what have you. But what really means the most to me is that I get to infuse that into a clinical background and understanding, and knowing how the body works and the nervous system works. It just dovetails so beautifully, and and it's just become my life. It has just completely been a life-altering experience that happened 25 years ago, and it's been more beautiful every day that passes because of more and more integrations and infusions of this together. So thank you for asking. I don't get to tell that story all the time, but
I totally believe it without question. I've had a comparable experience, and it's changing. Curious, do you talk about this in your new book?
I do. I finally just had to write it down. I wrote a lot of it in my first book, The Energy Codes, and then I started telling more and more about the experiences that I have had and that other students have had because of doing the work that I'm doing. Not that everyone that does the work, if you're not interested in having these extraordinary experiences, you certainly don't have to. It can just be used for healing issues and for, digesting better and sleeping better and having better relationships and those kinds of things. But for obvious reasons, people became attracted to, what's that thing you just talked about? What was that? Because I've had something kind of similar, and I want to understand more about that. I want to hear more about that. And so people started coming from all over the world to gather to hear about these things. And the more I shared, and this was crazy because I didn't want to share it, because here I'm a doctor and a clinic and got to have the science, and it's a certain language, right? And these other pardon?
I understand.
Yeah, you get it. So, but these other truths that some of that language just didn't hold the space for, it didn't encompass. It just had to come and be shared as well. And so people started really being interested in that. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You don't want me to talk about that stuff. And they're like, yes, we do. Thousands and thousands of people. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And so, okay. So I started, and I hesitantly, and I could feel myself growing right in real time, in the front of a room with hundreds of people there, just like, okay, I have to close my eyes and say this stuff, because it was stuff I thought, I'm never going to talk about that. It's not scientific, but it was my experience. And over the years, I was able to blend it together, and quantum science helped a lot, because the principles of quantum science give way to both traditional linear physics and also to, our beautiful history on this planet of deep spiritual writings and recordings of what is true about life. And so we get to weave them together now in the world of quantum science. And so as I shared more and more of it, people started healing in my community faster. They started dropping things faster, and they started connecting the dots, and things started happening so much that it became more and more the conversation. And the more it became the conversation, the more exponentially transformations were happening inside of the work that I was teaching. And so I was like, I got to write this down. I have to catch it, because I keep saying it over and over for years now, and I'm saying it and saying it. But what happens if I stop saying it? Where's it going to go? Right? I mean, I've trained facilitators and trainers and people that could carry on a lot of the knowledge, should anything happen. But I just wanted to know that it was, just down, I think, for me more than anything. And so the Anatomy of Awakening is that, where I just, I can't believe some of the things that I shared in there, just in terms of being super vulnerable and just revealing and just letting it, letting science and spirituality have, be shoulder to shoulder, and not marginalizing either, because both are better with the other. Both are better with the other. And so So the spirituality becomes tangible and grounded, and the science has heart and meaning. It has deep, soulful, rich presence to it when we can look through those eyes at the scientific facts that we know about the system. And so that's what the anatomy of awakening is. It sort of maps it out for people.
Oh my gosh, this time went too fast. We're going to have to do a part 2 or another version.
Absolutely.
Of awakening as a salt factor next time. Or
Okay.
something else. There are so many topics. I could have kept talking with you for hours, but apparently everyone's informed me they prefer podcasts the length of a workout.
Oh, right. Okay.
And those to be about 45, 50
Heaven
minutes.
forbid we work out more than 45 minutes. Nope,
So my guest has been Dr. Sue Morter, and there are going to be all kinds of links to find her below this podcast. If you're watching this, or if you picked it up on, through Spotify or any place else, there'll be all kinds of links to find more out about her. And I highly encourage that. I'm Dian Griesel. This is the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. Dr. Morter and I are going to move over to the green room. And I want to thank you all for watching. Please hit subscribe, and your friends are absolutely going to want to watch this episode along with you. So share it. Thanks, everybody. See you soon. Thank you, Dr. Morter.
My joy. Thank you for the great work you're doing. Thanks for having me.